I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the OECD too is very honored to be part of this important conference on disaster risk reduction, as OECD ministers under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan discussed options for building resilient economies and inclusive societies at their last ministerial meeting last May. In fact, people around the world do expect governments to strengthen their responses to a growing range of disaster risks and to strengthen capacities to manage the physical, social, and financial consequences. Governments increasingly recognize that these expectations can only be met if national stakeholders and the international community are part of the policy process. Therefore, inclusive responses are most effective in generating greater resilience of economies and societies and in addressing the potential consequences of disasters, from losses of lives, disruption of vital infrastructures, threats to jobs, to the degradation of environmental assets, stress on public finances, and erosion of trust in governments, all of which in the context of globalization, climate change, and international supply chain quickly spread across borders. From an OECD perspective, the successful governance of critical risks is a key strategic investment for countries and a means of preserving sustainable economic growth. As a result, OECD ministers recently adopted the recommendation on the governance of critical risks, a political commitment to improve policies, practices, and capacities at all levels of government to contend with complex risks, thus contributing to the post-HFA framework by establishing a comprehensive all-hazard and transboundary approach to country risk governance to serve as the foundation for enhancing national resilience and responsiveness. Second, building preparedness through foresight analysis, risk assessment, and financing frameworks to better anticipate complex and wide-ranging impacts. Third, raising awareness of critical risks to mobilize households, businesses, and international stakeholders and foster investment in risk prevention and mitigation. Fourth, developing adaptive capacity in crisis management by coordinating resources across the government, its agencies, and broader networks to support timely decision-making, communication, and emergency responses. And fifth, demonstrating transparency and accountability in risk-related decision-making by incorporating good governance practices and continuously learning from experience. This commitment was signed by 34 OECD countries, as well as 5 non-OECD countries, all of which are here today. The recommendation offers new avenues in the consideration of the post-2015 HFA, reflecting the urgent need for a more holistic approach, where the economic understanding of risk, its consequences, the role and strategies of government as a key actor together with other stakeholders are brought together. Effective risk government is particularly critical in the most fragile and conflict-prone areas where resilience of societies needs to be nurtured. Political economy issues, the need to restore trust and to foster openness and accountability are also key for building resilience into the future. Working along those principles will also help to ensure coherence with the post-2015 Sustainable Development Framework. In the future, ladies and gentlemen, the OECD will support countries in the implementation of the recommendations through policy analysis, peer review, benchmarking, and exchanges of best practice. And the example of the country peer review of Finland that was jointly realized through a cooperation of the UNHCR, the EC, and the OECD, and which will be released later this afternoon, is an excellent example of such cooperation. The OECD will report on the outcomes and stands ready to share the good practices and lessons learned for the benefits of the broader international community. We are very grateful to the effective leadership of Mrs. Wallström in this broader international process. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous remercie.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.